Okay, Assalamu alaikum everyone, and welcome to a new Quranic study. And today, inshallah, we're gonna read from Surah 11, Hud, verse 69. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Abraham and Lot. When our messengers went to Abraham with good news, they said, Peace. He said, Peace, and soon brought a roasted calf. So, from this verse, God is talking about the story of the messengers, uh, the angels that He sent to carry out His command to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, people's Lot. And in their way to their mission, they visited Abraham to give him a good news from God. So, so Abraham, he prepared for his guest a roasted calf, and that shows that Abraham was, extremely kind and generous. Verse 70. When he saw that their hands did not touch it, he became suspicious and fearful of them. They said, Do not be afraid, we are being dispatched to the people of Lot. So when Abraham offered the food to his guest, he expected them to eat it. So this is how it works normally, but they didn't eat. So he became suspicious and fearful, thinking that there is something wrong with them, like who they are or what they want, etc. So they said to him, Do not be afraid, we are dispatched to the people of Lot. So basically, they told him about their mission, that they are angels sent by God to annihilate the people of Lot. And the purpose of visiting Abraham was to give him a good news from God about the birth of Isaac, and also let him know about their mission to destroy, Sodom and Gomorrah. So we see that in Surah 29:31, God says, When Isaac's birth, they also said, We are on our way to annihilate the people of that town, Sodom, for its people have been wicked. And 51:28, God says, He harbored fear of them. They said, Have no fear, and they gave good news of a knowledgeable son. 71. His wife was standing, and she laughed when we gave her the good news about Isaac, and after Isaac, Jacob. She said, Oh to me, how could I bear a child at my age? And here is my husband, an old man. This is really strange. So here the angels give the good news to Abraham and his wife that they will have a son who is knowledgeable and righteous, and his name will be Isaac. Um, and it's not only that, and after Isaac, Jacob, it's a news about a grandson. It's a gift from God for 2 generations. So Abraham's wife was so surprised about, this news. It was very strange for her because she was an old woman and her husband was old as well. So, and she mentioned in another verse that she was sterile. She said, I am a sterile old woman. So, as we know, God's design the woman's body with a system that when the woman reached a certain age, you know, the menopause happened, then she's no longer able to get pregnant naturally. Okay, and this is technically means, you know, sterile woman. So the woman become sterile, no longer able to get pregnant. So that doesn't necessarily mean that Abraham's wife was sterile in her whole life. And Rashad Khalifa mentioned that in in an audio that when Isaac was born, he was not his only son. I mean Abraham's son. He had already Ishmael, 14 years older than Isaac. Okay, so so before I move to the next verse, I want to clarify something about the stories that was made up about Abraham in the Bible and in Hadith, that he married this and that, and that there is no reference in Quran about that. So, for example, in Hadith, they said that Abraham's wife Sarah was sterile. Sorry, and she asked him to marry her servant Hajar in order to have a child. He married her and she gave birth to Ishmael. So then Sarah get jealous of them and she asked him to leave Ishmael and his mother and go with her. So he left them in the middle of the desert, no water, no food. And the worst thing is that they believe that God ordered him to do that. So, so all that story is clearly a blasphemy against the prophet Abraham and God, and that makes Abraham looks very bad, you know, looks as a responsible father and disrespectful, selfish man who abused innocent woman and left her and her baby, you know, in the middle of the desert. It's completely wrong, and God mentioned in Quran that Abraham was extremely kind, clement, and obedient, and he raised the foundation of the shrine together with Ismail, you know, and this is just one of many stories in Hadith that contradicts Quran and ridicule the messengers and give bad thoughts about God, which is very dangerous. Thoughts like that God can order Abraham to do such things like leave his son and sacrifice his son, etc. This God's attributes are above their claims, and anyone who harbored evil thoughts about God is actually falling in the category of hypocrites and idol worshippers. And we see that in Surah 48:6. God says, and he will require the hypocrite men and women and the idol worshipping men and women, for they harbored evil thoughts about God. Their evil will backfire against them, for God is angry with them, condemned them, and has prepared for them Gehenna, what a miserable destiny. 73. They said, do you find it strange? For God has bestowed his mercy and blessings upon you, O inhabitants of the shrine. He is praiseworthy, glorious. So here the angels reminded her, like Abraham's wife, that God can make it happen because if he wants something, he just say be and it is. And with God, everything is possible. So, as we know, he created Adam and Eve from nothing, and there is many miracles birth happened, like the virgin birth of Jesus, the birth of John, and the birth of Isaac as well is a miracle too. So all those miraculous births are indicative of the power of God. And God mentioned in another verse that he guaranteed him Isaac and Jacob as a gift. He made them both righteous. So it's a mercy and a blessing and a reward from God to Abraham and his family for their righteous works at the shrine and for being steadfast believers. It's God's promise that He guarantees happiness now and forever. For this category, I will mention it. I will recite from Surah 16:97. God says, "Anyone who works righteousness, male or female, while believing, we will surely guarantee them a happy life in this world, and we will surely pay them their full recompense on the day of judgment for their righteous works." 74. When Abraham's fear subsided and the good news was delivered to him, he proceeded to argue with us on behalf of lost people. Indeed, Abraham was clement, extremely kind, and obedient. So, after Abraham received the good news, he started arguing with the messengers on behalf of lost people, since they inform him that they are going to destroy them. So maybe he asked them, for example, to give them, more time, more chance, to reform and be saved, etc. Who knows? We don't know exactly the details, but that, was from his kindness, as God describes him. He was clement, extremely kind and obedient. And we can see that also when he asked about Lot, because he was worried about him. In Surah 29:31, he said, "But Lot is living there." They said, "We are fully aware of everyone who lives in it. We will, of course, save him and his family, except his wife. She's doomed." 76. O Abraham, refrain from this. Your Lord's judgment has been issued. They have incurred inevitable retribution. So, as we know from the Quran that people's Lot practice homosexuality, which is something nobody did it before them, and something that is condemned by God, and that's why He sent a messenger among them to warn them about this in order to refrain from such, abomination, in order to be saved from the retribution. So, as we know, God never annihilated any community unjustly before sending to them warnings. See that in Surah 55:36, He says, "He warned them about our requital, but they ridiculed the warnings." 39. Suffer my retribution, you have been warned. So basically, people's sloth reach a point where they can't refrain. where they made up their mind. They failed to listen to God's message. They failed to take God's warnings seriously. They were totally blind by their lust and wickedness. As a consequence, they deserve God's retribution at specific predetermined time by God. So when the time come, he God sent his messengers to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, and God described it as an unavoidable retribution. It means no force, can stop it. It's a Lord's judgment. And that's why Abraham was asked to stop and refrain from arguing on behalf of those people. It doesn't because it doesn't change anything. It's actually wrong to argue on their behalf. Um, because Abraham was clement, he did the same thing, when he promised his father to ask forgiveness for him. But as soon as he realized that he was an enemy of God, he disowned him. God says he was obedient to his Lord. He was clement and obedient. Okay, and about arguing on behalf of those people, I wanna read the verse, Surah 4, verse 109. God says, "Here you are arguing on their behalf in this world. Who is going to argue with God on their behalf on the day of resurrection? Who is going to be their advocate?" 77. Homosexuality condemned. When our messengers went to Lot, they were mistreated, and he was embarrassed by their presence. He said, "This is a difficult day." His people came rushing. They had grown accustomed on their sinful acts. He said, "O my people, it will be pure for you if you take my daughters instead. You should reverence God. Do not embrace me with my guests. Have you not one reasonable man among you?" So when the messengers went to Lot, he was embarrassed by the presence of his guests. Why? Because he knows exactly his people. He knows how, they knows their wickedness, their evil and sinful intention. And he was expecting them to put him and his guests in big trouble. And he expressed that by saying, "This is a difficult day." And he was right, actually. And this is what happened. They negotiated with him about his guests, as it mentioned in Surah 55:37. So actually, they wanted him to give his guests as a kidnapped, maybe, And God mentioned in another verse that those people were criminals, wicked and criminals. They had grown accustomed to their sinful acts. Okay, so Lot refused to give them his guest, and he said, "It will be purer for you if you take my daughters instead." He didn't mean it literally because he already knew what they wanted, and he was actually deploring their actions and reminding them that if you must have sex, you should be with your wives that your Lord has created for you, purer for you, not with males. This is a gross sin and evil behavior. And we see that in Surah 26, 165, when he was arguing with his people about this topic in details. I'm gonna read. Do you have sex with males of all the people? You forsake the wives that your Lord has created for you. Indeed, you are transgressing people. They said, until you refrain, O Lord, you will be punished. He said, I deplore your actions. So, after all this reasonable advices, reminders, and warnings to reverence God, you know, he found that neither one of them was reasonable, and they were totally blind by their sinful lust. 79. They said, you know well that we have no need for your daughters. You know exactly what we want. So basically, this response shows that they were insisting in their sinful acts despite Lot's advices and warnings. 80. He said, I wish I were strong enough or had a powerful ally. So here he was, actually feeling helpless, despair, and hopeless, about them. He realized that those people are actually blocked in their sinfulness, blind, and that's why he wished that he could have the power to stop them, and protect himself and his guests. So at that moment, the guests reveal, their true identity, that they are angels sent by God to assure him. We see that in the next verse 81. The angel said, O Lord, we are your Lord's messengers, and these people cannot touch you. You should leave with your family during the night and let not any one of you look back, except your wife. She is condemned along with those who are condemned. Their appointed time is the morning. Is not the morning soon enough? It's it's God's system, that He saved the believers. And we see that in 10:103, God says, we ultimately save our messengers and those who believe. It is our immutable law that we save the believers. So God, saved the believers, and unfortunately, it was just one house of submitters. Imagine, just Lot's family who were submitters in whole, Sodom and Gomorrah, whole big community, just one house. And they were commanded to leave during the night before the retribution came to pass by morning. So they were destined to be saved. Except his wife, she was condemned for some reasons. It was mentioned in another verse that she betrayed him. She betrayed her husband. And this is another lesson that, being a wife of a messenger, or, a close one, cannot help at all against God. And it proves that the meat of intercession is shattered. You can see in Surah 66, verse 10. Okay, next verse. Sodom and Gomorrah destroyed. When our judgment came, we turned it upside down, and we showered it with hard, devastating rocks. Such rocks were designated by God by your Lord to strike the transgressors. So this how Solomon Gomorrah were completely destroyed, and it looks like that was an earthquake, that turned it upside down. And this earthquake that was followed by a volcano. And scientifically, it says that whenever a volcano acts up, earthquakes are one of the first signs. And God says, and we showered it with hard, devastating rocks. So, scientifically, when the lava rocks get heated up by the fire, the water inside turns to steam and expands. This creates pressure inside of the lava rocks, which can cause them to explode open. So this, I think, how they got showered with rocks. And of course, as we know, God is in control of everything, every single atom, and He's control of physics and everything, and all those tremendous rocks that were, you know, designated by God to strike specifically these transgressors. In verse 26, 173, God says, we showered them with a miserable shower. What a terrible shower for those had been warned. So this life is designed, so that when people insist to go against God and they get the retribution, they will not be able to say that you didn't give us a warnings, or we didn't know what we were doing. You didn't tell us, how bad it is, the retribution. So all these things, after the warnings, there is no excuses. And God repeated, many times the word of warnings, warnings, warnings. It means that, you know, a warning means in general that there is something wrong, that is leading to a retribution. It needs to be fixed in order to be saved. So, Lot were practicing homosexuality. They were the first community that started it, and they got the warnings, but they neglected, rejected, and ridiculed it, and as a consequence, they incur the retribution. And this is for that community and in the past, and the warnings is continues actually, and as we know, in this generation suffer from you know diseases like AIDS, for example, because of that. And God says, we set it up as a lesson for those who fear the painful retribution. Um, this is, you know, God's system, since the early generations that will never change. And as a result, we should learn from those lessons and not repeat the same mistakes. And for example, this Quran, the final testament, the purified and unified message from God through his messenger of the covenant, Rashid Khalifa, and with the mathematical miracle, it is to our warnings to the whole world, the Muslims, Christians, Jewish, etc., to whole human beings. A warning, to denounce all kind of idol worship and to devote the religion to God alone. So otherwise, the same consequence as the previous generation will be expected. So we have to be very careful and know that God's system is unchangeable. As God says in 33:62, this is God's eternal system, and you will find that God's system is unchangeable. So may God, continue to guide us and save us, inshallah. And I will stop here and thank you for listening.
Sister, awesome cross study.
MashaAllah, thank you.
Yeah, I think one of the important things to understand is like you said, like there are stories about Abraham in the Hadith, and there's stories about Abraham in the Bible, and people just accept them as facts, you know. And then there's other people that get turned off by religion when they read these types of stories and they leave religion altogether. But we don't see any indication in the Quran that Abraham abandoned Ishmael and his mother in the middle of the desert. You know, and in fact, we know that God said that it was his duty, it was his job for Abraham to purify his house for those who visited, and those who live near it. So they were commissioned. God commissioned him. God made it a duty for him to do that. So to say that he left them there and he left Mecca altogether is definitely not true. And then also like in the Bible, they say that Abraham was that Ishmael was Abraham's illegitimate son. So in fact, this is accusing a messenger of God, a righteous prophet who God says was never an idol worshiper of adultery, right? And so I mean that doesn't sound good either. And then we all know about other lies that they made up about him, including like circumcision and all that stuff. And just so much nonsense is there. But in all of these things that they attribute to the messengers, I mean, they keep away from the main facts, the things that are of most importance, and using these type of fabrications, they divert people from the right path.
Yeah, so far we have believed that God ordered Abraham, that we used to believe, to leave your wife, and Ismail was a baby at that time in the hot desert sun in Mecca, and she like they dramatically escalate the emotions to in uh, play with people's emotions, that like his wife was looking at him, why are you doing this, and then he doesn't respond and he turns away, and then she calls him, did God ask you to do that? And he looks at her and smiles at, and she understands that God's commandment, and then he leaves them in the middle desert, and then the baby was thirsty, and then or something, and then was rubbing his legs on the ground, and his wife was running back and forth, where during the Umrah people do the run back and forth, and and she was running back and forth looking for something for her son, and that's where the spring gushed out. All this story, we don't know if that is what are the validity of that is, because we know God is the most merciful, most kind. Why would He order his beloved friend, that, or any messenger or prophet to do such a harsh thing, leaving his wife and a newborn in the middle of desert? This is sort of like going against what God's teaching is, to be kind and merciful, and that in itself it's not right. Like they say that He ordered his Abraham to sacrifice his
Mm-hmm.
son, which is also, that this is wrong. God
Mm-hmm.
does not advocate any harm to anyone. He's the most kind, He's the most just. Praise God.
Were you guys able to hear my comment earlier?
Yeah,
Really?
we were able to hear. It was breaking off a little bit,
Oh,
but we were
is
able
it
to
okay
make it
now?
out what you were saying. Yeah.
Is it okay now?
Yeah, it's better now. It's all good.
Okay.
Can hear you now.
Okay, Masha. Okay,
Yeah.
yes, I think Huda asked me if I can repeat myself. Um, so yeah, mashallah, I agree with you. And so I was saying earlier that, how they have made up these lies, including the fact that, including what they say that, he abandoned his wife. But I was saying that in the Bible also, like it says that, Ishmael was Abraham's illegitimate son. So they're actually accusing him of adultery, that, messenger of God, like a righteous prophet who never committed idol worship, you know, actually he would commit adultery while he's married, obviously, with his wife. And the interesting thing is that, God makes it irrelevant who was the wife or whatever the details are. So he doesn't even mention the name of the wife in the Quran, but in the Bible it says Sarah. And um, and then also, like, if you look at the Bible, like it's so weird. Like it says that Hajar was the mother, right? And so he was living with both the wives. And then when Ishmael was 15 years old, he was mocking Sarah. And then Sarah got upset and she told Abraham to abandon them, to kick them out of the house. Hajar and Ishmael. And then Abraham didn't want to do it. And then God commanded Abraham that no, he has to do it. How bad is that? And
That's
then,
funny.
yeah, and then he did it, And then the story that you were saying about the Ishmael, rubbing his feet against the water. Rubbing his feet against the surface of the land, and the Zamzam water comes out. That itself is like such a fabrication. And another proof for that is like they have multiple versions of it, right? Like how Zamzam came out. There's some places you go, they say, Ishmael rubbed his feet, and then Zamzam came out. And the other place it said, his wife was circling, running around Safa and Marwa 7 times, looking for water. And then on one side, and that in itself is a lie, because God showed Abraham how to perform Hajj. That was given to him. It's not a mocking thing that we're doing, following Abraham's wife running around looking for water, you know. And then, so they say that she was doing that, and then she saw Angel Gabriel, who's the angel of revelation, brings scripture and stuff like that. Like Gabriel came and he shot the water out of the earth. So there's so many of these nonsense stories. Um, and but important thing for us to know is like anything that is not confirmed by the Quran, we don't accept it. All the truth about Abraham is mentioned in the Bible. Is mentioned in the Quran. Things that are in the Bible, 90% are true. But unless it's confirmed in the Quran, the 10% is nonsense. So we don't accept that. And a lot of these other details that we see in the Bible are just, well, first irrelevant, but on top of that, like there's so much stuff that is just simply blasphemous, simply like very satanic and even inappropriate, that you can't even, read some of those verses in front of children. And if I read some of those verses, you would know what I'm talking about. It's unbelievable. It's
Brother
insane.
Suleiman, yes, like
It's just,
the same problem with your voice. Like we could get what you're saying, but I think it's some sort of a technical problem, I guess. So
Okay,
yeah.
It's like you have a bad sore throat.
a bad sore throat, like a good
Yeah.
versus a good sore throat. Okay.
You should take some medicine.
And it's interesting that we were born and raised in so-called Muslim communities, and we heard about all these fabrications. They are actually mentioned in religious books in the whole like schools, like the entire school days. So we read about these things, and then all of a sudden we realized that we were born and raised as like fabricated Christianity. I think it has nothing to do with the Quran.
It's sort of like, they try to make more value for Prophet Muhammad, that he is a descendant of Ismail. So they give him more level by his rubbing his feet. The Zamzam came out. So, they want to give him more value in some way, that he's descendant of Ismail, I guess. That may be the reason.
I mean, why? Prophet Muhammad himself was such an honorable person. So, I mean,
Yeah, I
what's
mean
his need?
they
Yeah.
gave him so much, they gave him so much credit. They said, like Muhammad, there was Muhammad sweat had the power to heal so many people. There's a woman, when Muhammad was sleeping, she was coming around and she was collecting his sweat. I don't know what else. I forgot part of it, but it was so funny. Uh, yeah, I think they gave him plenty of, you know, praise. I mean, of course. But yeah, I mean, a lot of it, I mean, like you gotta ask yourself, like, like, why, he did all these things, like, for example, when you read about Lot, I mean, you read about Lot here too around the same time, like, they say, like, Lot got drunk and had sex with his daughters, this is the Bible, like, how would you come up with that, and how would a God-fearing person, reading these scriptures will justify that, and then what kind of lives do they live?
Brother, we don't understand. It's not clear.
Yeah, your sore throat is getting worse. Yeah, maybe the mic. Maybe you can change the mic or speak through the iPad directly or iPhone. That may work.
Is he gone? Okay.
You may be fixing it.
I even fixed the YouTube too. I couldn't hear him from the beginning.
Oh, okay.
Is
You know,
this
this,
good?
at a point it was we could get it what you were saying, but at a certain point it was completely computer like. Your sound was like
Uh-huh.
computer.
Oh, is it good now?
Yes,
Yes.
wonderful.
Yes.
Okay.
So you have to retell what you were saying
I forgot what I was saying. Oh yeah, I was saying
about the
part
sweat.
of. Oh yeah, there. I mean, I was saying like he said, because he's a descendant of Muhammad, so they want to give him special. I mean, Muhammad's a descendant of Ishmael, so they want to give him like more honor by saying he rubbed his feet. And I was saying, well, they've given him enough honor. Like they say, even with Muhammad sweat, like they made medicines and had healing powers and so much stuff. Like I said, there was a woman. She used to come around when Muhammad was sleeping, and she would come and collect all his sweat. Uh,
That's creepy. I mean, who would?
yeah, yeah. And where was his wife when this woman was doing that?
It's a stalker. Talk about that. Yeah, it's pretty sad how they build the stories to put emotions in people's heart.
Mhm.
You know what? In this Quran study, I was reading that Abraham was most kind element, very kind person, and he was worried about people of Lot and Lot himself, and he was arguing with the angels about them, and God and the angels say refrain. So intercede is completely rejected in not only in the hereafter, in this world also. You cannot intercede on behalf of anyone who is a disbeliever. And this is a true story, my personal experience in our regular mosque. I mean, one of the head of the whole group, one of the top person in our mosque, I mean, in our mosque, he comes in once in a while. So one day he was preaching, and then he said, one of the guy came to the Prophet Muhammad, and he said, "Oh Prophet, my mother does not believe in the message." And he tells that person, "Go home, I will pray for her." As soon the guy comes home, as soon he opens the door, he saw his mother sitting on the janamaz and the do the salat and performing the salat. And the guy builds emotion. He said, anyone who prophet would pray, why wouldn't they become believer right away? I mean, the way they sing that, if prophet would pray for someone, that person instantly become a believer. And everybody was like, whoa, subhanallah, this and that. And after the prayer, mashallah, God put a courage to me to go and ask him directly that, then why didn't he pray for his uncles? I mean, why didn't he pray for his whole community? I mean, why just he prayed for that lady? That doesn't make any sense. If his prayer was enough to make anyone believe, Prophet Muhammad's prayer for enough to make anyone believe, then why didn't he pray for his uncles and his brothers? I mean, his whole community. And he said, he becomes so confused, the guy, and he said, like, well, he didn't pray for them. I mean, why didn't he pray for them? If that only takes for someone to believe, then he should have prayed for everybody, and everybody would have become a believer. And then all of a sudden, the Salat Azan was started announcing, and he said, "Okay, come on, guys." He totally ignored me and walked away from the question. I mean, this is how scared they become when they are cornered. I mean, he said that when Prophet would pray for someone, everybody's like emotionally, yeah, yeah, Prophet Muhammad, this is Subhanallah, start reading Durud Sharif and this and that. But when the reality hits, they run away. I mean, this is the reality of their belief is stuff.
Mashallah, and I think these verses also are talking about how homosexuality is condemned, right? So people who justify homosexuality by saying that people are born that way, and people should uh, you know love who they want. I mean, yeah, in the sense that you have freedom. So if someone wants to commit a sin, they should do it. I mean, they shouldn't, not that they should do it, but they should have the freedom to choose between God and Satan based on their own free will, right? You shouldn't force people to do that based on authority, but at the same time, we shouldn't encourage this type of behavior, and we should actually try to talk people whom we know, we should try to talk them out of it rather than tolerate it, and like the messenger of the covenant from the Quran, I mean, he has explained that when God says in the Quran that do not be beware of retribution that may not be limited to the evil doers. So, and it talks about in the footnote that a community that tolerates homosexuality may be hit by an earthquake. So, I mean, tolerating doesn't mean that everybody has the freedom to do what they want, but tolerating means that when people are doing it, you're approving of it, and you're encouraging it. You're not denouncing it, and so people feel welcome to commit such kind of acts and demand people to accept it in a way that approves of them, and positive as the norm, what they do, instead of calling it a sinful action. I mean, so this obviously impacts our societies and our children. So, but there is a clear distinction that has to be made between, like, homosexuality being allowed versus homosexuality being tolerated. you know so, I mean, how can we it's easy for us to, when we're living in a civilization where homosexuality is tolerated, we shouldn't be one of those people who tolerate it as well, just because we're living in that community. I mean, yes, if it's forced on us by somewhere, we fear being persecuted, I guess that's a different thing, you know. But like it's possible, like within your close context, for example, you know, you could talk to people, or you could still, you know, let it be known in a certain way without like, you know, getting yourself, you know, involved in some kind of a lawsuit against this based on discrimination or something. We shouldn't discriminate against people, but at the same time, you know, I mean, if you can advise people and you try to talk them out of it, you know, I mean, that is saving yourself from the punishment that, you know, is coming for those people, right? So I think it's always something that we should keep in mind. Um, I think oftentimes it's hard, right? So, but we should be aware that God says that, you know, we should, and it's not just limited to homosexuality, obviously, you know, this should be for everything, you know, like when we see things happening that are not righteous, we shouldn't be tolerating them. Like it talks about homosexuality, it talks about like highway robbery, you know, they were also doing that, and they were doing other sinful things too. And all of them were being tolerated, and so you know, we should be mindful of that. And the history of Sodom and Gomorrah, I think, is very you know, much of an example for people. Like still these places, you know, where Sodom and Gomorrah, where, you know, these rocks were showered. I mean, if you can still go, it's like you know, Dead Sea, I believe, right? Around the Dead Sea area, and you could still, if you still go and visit that site, you can actually see, there's videos on the internet. You can actually go see, and you can find rocks with you know, stuff in it that shows that, you know, they were you know, caused by some volcanic activity. So God has, you know, preserved, you know, some of these signs for us so people can learn from them, you know. But you can still see that people just are totally heedless. Actually, you saw a funny movie about Abraham. There was Abraham and Sodom and Gomorrah were there in the, you know, communities were there, but, you know, they kind of totally sort of covered up the idea of homosexuality. But then, I mean, the other elements of it, there was some parts of it that showed that these people had homosexuality as part of their thing. But, you know, it wasn't like the main story in the whole situation, you know. But anyways, that it is very funny, and there's actually some of you might have seen the clips, especially the ones about circumcision, and is very funny. But I think some of you, when doing the circumcision debate, some of you might have seen some of those clips where Abraham, where God orders Abraham to circumcise, and then he comes and tells the people, you know, that they need to get it done. Maybe I'll share it, you know, later.
Also,
No, I won't share it with everyone. Just anybody who wants me to share
me,
it.
me, me,
Yeah.
me, me.
Okay.
My both hands are raised.
Okay.
You know, question, you know, when you talk to like somebody who's doing homosexuality, you know, that we shouldn't give them, this is my understanding, dirty looks or these things like that. I mean, I guess we should be nice to them, and I mean,
Dirty
and just
looks?
like, you know, giving them, you know, like, I don't like your behavior, I don't like what you do.
Right, 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 right.
That way they will become defensive, right? You be
Hmm.
nice to them and then encourage them to, you know, not to do this act. That way they can think. My other question is, what about female sexual homosexual? We don't see that in the Quran. What does, you know, the religion has to say about that?
Well, it says homosexuality condemned, right? So,
So both way, right?
yeah, yeah, of
Okay,
course. God
thanks.
has designed man and woman, you know, that's
Hmm.
the right way. I mean, come on, that's even a question.
No, I didn't know that there's no mention, because in these verses we
Right,
read,
right.
this is a, you have, you
Yeah,
know, they have sex with
yeah,
men, you know, so no mention of women.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Homosexuality in general is not a
yeah,
natural, it's an evil act, you know, goes
yeah.
against God's design and God's system. So it's condemned, you know. So is you know, pedophilia and, you know, having all kinds of other sexual deviant behaviors that people indulge into, like, some people have sex with animals, and all these types of things, right? So it's all wrong. I mean, even though God doesn't say anywhere in the Quran that you shouldn't do it with animals, but that obviously we understand that we shouldn't do that.
Brother Suleiman, I wanted to share a video clip of Sodom and Gomorrah. Like, this is actually the closest they have. I think this is the location you were referring to. Can I share the screen?
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Do I have to end? I think I have to end sharing on my side.
Okay.
Oh no, you
Yeah.
can share it. Yeah, I can see.
Oh, if you can send it to in the messenger,
Okay.
we can all see it.
No, we can see it now.
Can you see it?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. How about the sound?
We can't hear the sounds.
So,
Unless, yeah, we can
how
hear it
we
now.
respond to that,
Okay.
then God will treat us. Israelites had. That's why God would say the iniquity of the daughter of my people is greater than the sin of Sodom, which was overthrown. Now Jesus also used Sodom
So what
greater than
I
the
wanted to
Israelites had. That's why
show is
God,
this is the city this is the area actually. And this video clip, I can share it with you. It's very interesting. They even have like stones that like hit this city, and they like have collections of the stones that you can see. And I will share it with you. But just look at this area; it's so huge. I mean, and this God turned it upside down. Yeah. So we should be careful.
Okay, Shima, I think I'm gonna send you another clip if you can play it also. Okay, just give
Sure.
me
Yeah.
a minute.
Did you send it in the chat box?
I'll just message you that one.
Okay, how can I see my messages? Because the only thing I can see is the chat box. Could you please send it here?
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, your chat box here, okay.
MasterCard is working alongside Black women business owners with ways to get more businesses online and hundreds of millions in funding. Join MasterCard in showing respect and start something priceless.
I'm sharing
This is all your
the
land
link for the
all of
video we
eternity.
just saw. It's a very interesting video. Inshallah, you will have the time to watch it. And then in the meantime, I'm waiting for Brother Suleiman's link. Okay. Okay, this one. Okay.
This is all your land for all of eternity.
Yeah, but apparently God forgot to tell anyone else. We're at war with someone like every other day.
Excuse me, I and my kinsmen have vanquished our enemies by the mighty hand of God. Blessed be he.
Praise is his name, and glory is graciousness.
Wealthy bounty.
Therefore, to signify my covenant with the one true God, I shall on this day circumcise the flesh of my penis, and of you, and you, and of you, and of every male who dwelleth hereby.
Excuse me?
I don't know what you mean.
We shall grasp the foreskins of our penises, and we shall cut therefrom the extra flesh. Amen.
Oh, I don't think I have any extra.
Couldn't we pierce our ears or something?
No. So it shall be written, and so it shall be done.
Let me get this straight. You're saying you have too much. You know, Abe, it's been a long day. We've all had a lot to drink. And I know that this foreskin thing sounds like a good idea now, but you might want to sleep on it. We can always cut it off in the morning. But if we do it now, there's just no way to get it back on there.
No. Trust me, it's going to be a very, very sleek look. This is going to catch on. I'm gonna go get my good knife. Just wait right there. I'll be right back to cut your penises. Not the whole thing, you understand, just the very tip. Then after, we're all gonna have wine and sponge cake.
Do you have any idea where we're going?
Okay, I think that's about it.
We have to save my anima.
Do you want me to stop?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
He said that God was going to smite Sodom.
Okay.
This video clearly shows the absurdity of the concept.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also in this movie, they actually go to Sodom and Gomorrah, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Okay, so I guess if there are there any off-topic questions maybe? If not, God willing, we can conclude the study. Okay, so thank you all for joining, and God willing, our next study is going to be on Saturday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time, and God willing, Ali, you'll be the teacher? Or, yeah. Ali, are you there? Ali?
Are we still on? Hey, hello?
Yeah, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I was saying, did you guys hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, yeah, I was saying, God willing, our next study is going to be on Saturday, so I think it's your turn, right?
Sure, inshallah.
Okay, okay, inshallah.
I was just went to do the salat. Can I just make one comment?
Sure.
Real quick, if you're,
Yeah, of
let
course.
me just bring it up. Yeah, because it's very interesting when the sister was doing the Quran study, that I didn't realize that before, that when she talks about Abraham's wife and when she laughed, and then I was just trying to ponder upon then why she laughed, and the word comes that she brought up was, I never thought of that, mashallah, was menopause, because menopause is a state that hits around age 50 on women, that after that they become sterile, because God has blessed women with a certain amount of eggs, and they release every month, and when they run out by the age of 50, and then there are no more eggs coming, and then that's where you hit menopause, and after that it's impossible for one to get pregnant. It is as same as the story of Mary when she became pregnant without male intervention, and that was, she has one side, she has eggs, but she doesn't have the male intervention, so both has to be present in order to conceive a child. So in this case, the on Mary's case, female part was active, but not the male part. But in Sarah's condition, her female part is inactive. It's very much related to that. It's as strange as Jesus was born. So she is sterile, and having a baby out of a sterile woman, it's as equal to as Mary is giving birth to Jesus. So that's why she was shocked, that how can a person, and then God mentions the wrinkles on her face. Not only, usually people don't get wrinkles at age 50, so that she way beyond that age, could be 60s, 70s, 80s, and a very high age, that when she has wrinkles. And that is a perfect, I mean, you are absolutely certain that you cannot have a child. You have passed the menopause stage far beyond the point that now you are absolutely cannot have a child. And then she also mentions, my husband is an old. So here we see the situation, both male and female are inactive, and having a baby after that, and only one baby, Isaac, then Jacob after that. So having two babies, and even more a miracle in the sense of you, if you're so surprised about Jesus' birth, then you should.
Sorry, Ali, you said two babies?
Yeah, I mean, God says we gave you good news of Isaac and then Jacob after Isaac, right? In the story we read.
Jacob. Well, I thought Isaac was Jacob's father. Jacob was the son of Isaac.
Okay, we give you good
Yeah.
news of a son. I mean, I think
Yeah, Isaac was his son, but then Jacob was his
his
grandson.
son. Okay, his
Yeah,
grandson.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So Jacob was Isaac's son, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, I misunderstood that part. So yeah, I mean, still, I mean, if it's Isaac' birth was then as miracle, even far more miraculous than Jesus' son in that sense that I mean, both parents are sterile in a way, and then having a baby in that old age, and not only conceiving a baby in old age. We had cases that where a woman is in their 50s conceiving a child, and I mean, it was looked at as strange because not only conceiving is a problem, going through the whole pregnancy, baby's growth and everything, you have to be in a good state. Nowadays they give them so many multivitamins to have a baby because we lack a lot of nutrition, and being old is even make it far worse to have a healthy child. So in that sense, I mean, if you really believe that, give value to Jesus, I mean, then you should give more value to Isaac in that sense. That's my understanding. Praise God. And mashallah, thank you for bringing that point of the menopause. Thanks.
All right, so thank you all for joining. Inshallah, Ali will be our next teacher. Our study is going to be on Saturday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. Um, and God willing, we'll see you then. God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
God bless you. Salam alaikum.
Assalamualaikum everyone.